I am so excited to be able to show you this knife today. I have been waiting and waiting to get my hands on one, and finally, and it's fantastic. I have to tell you, it's everything I expected and more. But there's one small design feature that I feel was left out. Whether or not it was intentional, I don't know. We'll have to see. Something was missed, and we're going to talk about what that is, so stick around. Hey, how you doing? My name is Jay. If this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by, and consider clicking on subscribe if you're looking for knife reviews that get right to the point. So right about now, you should be looking at some specs up on the screen. These are measurements that I had taken myself. So you can either pause and read here, or I will also have them listed down below in the description, just in case you want to follow along. So for those of you that aren't aware of the deal with the Mordax here, it's sold by Drop, formerly Massdrop, manufactured by ProTech, designed by Ferrum Forge. Let's get going with some size comparisons so you can get an idea of what we're working with today. This is the Spyderco PM2, and then of course we'll follow that up with the Para 3. Let's do a couple Benchmades. Here is the Bug Out, and then the 940. Let's wrap up this section from Kershaw with the Skyline. So starting out with what I like about the Mordax is going to be the size, and I know now I've obviously read the specs many times before I made the purchase, and still this is a little bit smaller than I expected, and here's why. Because I'm going to bring out the crux, okay, from Drop Ferrum Forge design, blade thickness of 4 millimeters. Here's another one from Ferrum Forge and Drop. This is the Dow, which also has a 4 millimeter thick blade. The Mordax, 3.2 millimeters with a handle thickness of only 0.46. So that's why I'm saying it's a little bit smaller than I expected, especially since, I'm used to these other two. It's a good surprise, especially when it comes to cutting with this. The action of the Mordax is absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's going to be, as you can see, it's going to be you can either do the flipper deployment, which also does have a little bit of jimping there. That's actually the only spot with jimping on the flipper tab. So you can either deploy it with the flipper, or you can go ahead and you see the button here with the plunge lock. You can go ahead and deploy it that way as well. Both work the same. They're pretty easy to do, and don't worry about there not being like any kind of a backup lock, because this guy, okay, it does shake out. Wow, that shakes out pretty easy. This also features a really nice sized forward finger choil. You can see that. I wear about medium sized hands. Actually, they might be bigger, but I just like to say medium. And I can fit even, like the fattest part of my index finger, I can fit there in the choil. So that means for those of you with like bigger hands, you should still be able to use that choil with no trouble at all. Now, I know for a lot of you, this next feature, it's pretty important. And I understand why, and you can see if I bring it up close, yep, this is made right here in the good old US of A. Now at first glance, you might think that there is no lanyard hole, but look at that, yep. So for those of you lanyard people, you do still have the ability to use one, and I really like that also because it's not stealing away handle space from the rest of the knife when it's hidden like this. I like that. Now this isn't really a huge deal for me, but I know for some of you it is, and it's going to be that captured pivot. So yeah, it does take just a Torx number 8, but you don't have to worry about having 2 of them to make any adjustments. So I just wanted to bring you in really close so I can show you here. You can see it does have just there's the one body screw, and then this is going to be for the stop pin, which, by the way, is enormous. Yeah, that is a very big stop pin. But if you see here, this the body screw here, you flip it over, look at that. Yep, so it does not come through to the other side. So they wanted to keep this, the show side, as sterile as possible, and that's great. They did go ahead and give us it's a deep carry pocket clip, so it is going to be tip up only, and unfortunately it's going to be for just righties. Yeah, no lefty love this time. But if you take a look here, you can see, look at that. Yep, the screws and the attachment point are both, that's all recessed. So there's really not going to be too much getting in the way when you're putting this in and out of your pocket. Now, before I go ahead and toss this up on the scale, I want to show you now, these are of course the milled aluminum scales, and you can get them in a plain version, so without the milling going on. But I know that one is a little bit heavier than this, because, you know, there's some material missing. 3.6 ounces. That is going to be roughly the equivalent of 4 AA batteries. Oh, and look at that, the same weight as the Paramilitary 2. Okay, so I went ahead and I grabbed a couple different materials to cut, because I want to go ahead and let's test out how this 3.2 millimeter thick blade, let's see how well it slices. First, we're going to try the cardboard, and we're also going to check and see how well that the coating holds up from this, you know, little bit amount of usage. Yeah, that slices pretty darn well. Let's check the blade. Okay, so you can see it's got some marks on it, but I think those are going to come right off. Let me grab a rag here. Let's see. Oh yeah. Okay, so for the cardboard, yeah, you can see any of those marks. They're rubbing. They're rubbing right off. Here, I got this little envelope from Amazon. Oh, wow. Ooh, that's nice. Let's check that edge. Excuse me, let's check that coating. Yeah, that's pretty good. This one is going to be the most expensive. The milled scales with the black coated blade, that's going to add $30 to the $240 base price. And I figured, you know, what the heck, if I'm already anteing up that kind of money, I might as well just go all in, and that's what I did. But you can get this in either they have the plain handled version, so this will just be, you know, without the milling, in either blue or green with a stonewash blade, or you can get it in gray as well. I mean, I like the milling, don't get me wrong, but the one problem that I have run into, and now again, this could be just a lefty specific thing, but okay, so when I go ahead and when I go to take this out of my pocket, if I have it like tilted at all while I'm trying to take it out of my pocket, yeah, my pocket material catches on this stuff here. Let me show you, I want to show you what happens when you tighten it, okay? I'm going to take my T8 here, and I'm going to tighten it just a little bit. Now listen to it once I unlock the blade. Ready? Did you hear that? Did you hear that? It sounds like, you know that, whatever, what's the thing called, the drumstick thing or whatever, for you play the xylophones, and then the thing that you use to hit the different plates? That's exactly what that sounded like when you take the thing and you go all the way across those keys. That's what that reminds me of. And it feels like that too, if that makes any sense. Like it feels like it's dragging across something, like that stepping. And that's what happens when this is tightened completely. Sure, yeah, the blade play is all gone, but And it eventually loosens up. That's something else we need to talk about, is that this is going to require, at least my example, is going to require some Loctite. Okay, so now let's talk about my big issue with the Mordax. Now, I'm a left-handed individual, so obviously this, you know, with the button being where it is, it's designed for righties. My point being is that this may be more of a left-handed issue than anything else. So I just want to say that first before we get into it. So out on the table I have, these are all some of the other button locks that I own. These all happen to be automatics, because you can also, you know, there's manual button lock knives as well. And just about every button lock that I own, you can see here, like on this Kershaw, if you notice, there is a clear distinction between the surface of the button and the surface of the handle, the scales. You can see it's there. You can see here on this Boker, on this Hogue. Well, this one is also even raised up a little bit, so there's an even clearer distinction on this Benchmade Casbah. So you can definitely tell where the button is and where the scales are. So now look at this from a left-handed person's perspective now. So a lefty is going to have to use their index finger to operate this button, but unfortunately, if you take a look at the button here, it's smooth. It's actually, it feels very, very similar to the handle scales, and it's also at the same height as the highest point of the scales as well. So from a lefty's perspective, so when I'm feeling around to find that button, I have a really hard time being able to find the button and unlock it. Now, no, we're not talking about any substantial period of time. You know, we're talking about fractions of a second, but it's something I have to stop and think about. Do you want to see the knife that the Mordax kicked out of my pocket? Yeah, the Anthem. That's how friggin' fantastic that this knife is. But it also got me thinking, since we're talking about Benchmades, okay, so we know that most Benchmades, I mean, this one has ball bearing pivot, but we know for the most part Benchmades, they run on bronze washers. I was wondering if this has, since this blade's riding on a ball bearing pivot, I wonder, especially since it's a button lock, if they could have gotten away with the washers on the inside. So then where does that leave us here with the Mordax? Well, I think you pretty much know where I'm going to land. I mean, even though, you know, this is going to cost a little bit of money, it's worth it. I have not been able to put this thing down. And on top of that, oh, I almost forgot to show you, they give you one heck of a pouch. Yeah, this is like one of the nicest pouches. It's a lot thicker than like the ones that you'll get from like Ganzo or Benchmade or, well, anybody else. Very nice. So hey, if you enjoyed this video and you got any value from it, don't forget, you know, leave a thumbs up. I like those. And also consider clicking on subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next video. Take care.